The number on the screen didn't make sense at first. I refreshed the page, logged out, logged back in. Still the same. $2,143,000 gone. Not transferred. Not invested. Not even misrouted by some banking glitch. Gone. And the worst part? When I called my brother Caleb to ask what happened, he answered on the second ring calm as a Sunday morning and said, "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you about that. The wedding went a little over budget." A little over budget. I sat there holding the phone so tight I thought I might crack the screen. I had spent the last 3 years quietly building towards something, finishing my MBA, preparing to launch a small logistics company with a college friend. I had a plan, a real one, and in the span of one phone call, I found out that Caleb had already spent the foundation of that plan. On centerpieces, on a private venue, on a honeymoon that lasted 3 weeks.
My name is Sienna.
I'm 34, and this is the story of how my family let my brother steal my future, and then expected me to smile at Christmas dinner. My father's name is Gerald, and he was a careful man. He spent 30 years in commercial real estate, made smart decisions, and built real wealth. When I was 12, he sat me down and explained what a trust fund was. Not the flashy kind you see in movies, but a structured account that would hold my inheritance until I turned 30. He set one up for me. He set one up for Caleb. We each had our own. That was the thing people seemed to keep forgetting once the story got complicated. Separate accounts. Separate futures. Caleb's fund was roughly the same size as mine when we were kids. But Caleb had access to his at 25 because he'd convinced my father he was ready. By the time he was 28, his fund was already significantly reduced. I didn't know the details back then. No one told me. My mother, Diane, had a way of managing information like a traffic controller. She let through what was comfortable and held back everything else. What I did know was that Caleb had a girlfriend, then a fiancé, then a wedding in the works that kept growing. Every family call had a new update, a new venue, a second reception, a destination element added. I remember asking my mom once, "Where's he getting the money for all this?" She laughed it off. "Don't worry about Caleb. He's figuring it out." She knew. I'm almost certain she knew. But I didn't yet. That would come later, and when it did, it wouldn't come gently. Here's what I found out piece by piece over the following weeks. When Caleb's own fund ran low, he didn't scale back the wedding. He didn't have an honest conversation with his fiancée, Mara, about what they could actually afford. Instead, he went to the family's estate attorney, a man named Richard who had managed our family's accounts for decades, and told him that I had authorized a transfer. He said I wanted to contribute to the wedding. He said I'd been in contact with him and had given verbal approval pending paperwork. Richard, who should have called me directly, didn't. He processed the transfer in 2 separate installments over 6 months. He later told me he assumed the family had discussed it.
He assumed wrong.
Caleb spent the money like it was already his. A private estate in Napa, a 14-piece band, floral arrangements that cost more than most people's cars, a honeymoon to the Maldives, then Tuscany, then Tokyo, 260 guests. Caleb posted the photos on Instagram. I commented a heart on one of them. I had no idea. I was looking at my own money on the screen. When I finally found out, when I sat down to review my fund ahead of a planned withdrawal for the business, I was 18 months away from turning 30. The account that was supposed to hold over $2 million held a little under $40,000. $40,000. I didn't yell. I want to make that clear because a lot of people ask me how I reacted and they expect me to say I lost it. I didn't. Something colder happened. I got very, very still. I called my father first. Gerald listened and then said something I will never forget. "Sienna, I think we all need to sit down together and talk about this like adults." Not "I'm so sorry." Not "that was wrong." Just "let's all sit down." Like I was the one creating a scene. My mother cried when I called her. Diane has a way of redirecting grief onto herself that is almost artistic. She said she was heartbroken. She said she didn't know the full extent. She said Caleb got carried away, but that he loved me and never meant to hurt me. She actually asked me not to make this into a whole thing before the holidays. I met with Richard, the attorney, and made it clear that what happened was legally actionable. He was pale the entire meeting. He had made a significant professional error, and he knew it. We came to an agreement outside of court, one I can't disclose in detail, but it helped partially offset what was lost. Partially. Then I sat down with Caleb, just the two of us, and I said, very quietly, I need you to understand what you took from me. He nodded a lot. He apologized. He said he'd always planned to pay it back. He said the wedding was an investment in his future. He said Mara deserved the best. I stood up. I left. And I made a decision that day about exactly how much space Caleb would occupy in my life going forward. The marriage lasted 14 months. I won't pretend I wasn't watching from a distance as things unraveled for Caleb, because I was. Not out of spite, exactly. More like the way you watch a slow leak in a tire that someone told you wasn't a problem. Eventually, the math catches up. Caleb and Mara had built a life sized for 2 incomes and a fantasy. The house they rented was too expensive. The credit card debt from the wedding. Yes, even after spending my money, there was still credit card debt. Started compounding. Mara was ambitious and eventually frustrated by Caleb's inability to stabilize their finances. She left. I heard about it through my parents, in the same soft, managed way I heard about everything, cushioned, minimized, offered with a side of, he's really struggling. Where are you watching from, by the way? Drop in the comments. I want to know who's been following along with this. Caleb moved into a smaller apartment. He changed jobs twice. He had always been someone who relied on the idea that things would work out, that money would appear, that someone would step in. For most of his life, someone always had. Our parents. My trust fund. Mara's income for a while. But there's a version of adulthood that catches up with all of us eventually. For Caleb, it arrived in his early 30s, right on schedule. The first time Caleb called asking for money, I thought it was a one-time thing. He had a gap between paychecks. He needed $800 for rent. He promised he'd pay me back. I transferred it. I told myself it was just this once. The second time was 6 weeks later. Then again 2 months after that. Each call had a different reason: a car repair, a medical bill, a security deposit on a new place. But the pattern was the same. The tone was the same. That slightly too casual voice Caleb uses when he wants something. The one that sounds relaxed but has an undercurrent of pressure. By the 4th call, I stopped answering immediately. I'd let it ring. I'd sit with it for a day or 2. And then I'd call back with a question instead of an answer. What's your plan, Caleb? Not for this month. What's your actual plan? He didn't like that. He told me I was being cold. He said family doesn't keep score. He said, and I'm not making this up, that he would have helped me if the situation were reversed. I let that sit between us for a long moment. Then I said, you did have access to my money, Caleb. You used it. This is what the other side of that looks like. He hung up. My mother called me the next morning to tell me I was being cruel. As a sister. As the girl in this family who is always expected to keep the peace, smooth things over, and put everyone else's feelings first, I was being called cruel for simply refusing to keep funding the consequences of a betrayal I never agreed to. That was the moment something in me permanently shifted. I rebuilt. Slower than I planned, but I rebuilt. The business my college friend and I had designed launched 2 years later than we intended, smaller than we originally envisioned. We made it work. It's profitable now. It's mine, genuinely, fully mine, and no one can touch it. I'm not angry at Caleb the way I once was. Anger takes energy, and I've found better places to put mine. What I feel now is closer to clarity. I see him for exactly who he is, not a villain. Just a person who never learned that other people's resources are a safety net for his choices. And I see my family clearly too. I see how easily they expected me, the sister, to absorb it. to forgive faster, to give more, to need less. I stopped doing that. Caleb still calls. Not every month now, but often enough. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I don't. When I do, I listen, I ask questions, I don't transfer money. I stopped explaining why. The explanations stopped mattering a long time ago. My father passed away 2 years ago. In the weeks after, when we were all sitting together going through his things, Caleb looked at me across the room and said, "I really am sorry, Sienna. About the money. About all of it." I nodded. I believed him. I also knew that being sorry and being different are two separate things. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories like this one, because this wasn't the only thing Caleb did. Not even close. Some people treat other people's futures like a credit line with no due date. They spend freely, apologize eventually, and then wait for things to reset. What they don't account for is the moment the other person, the sister, the quiet one, the one who is always supposed to understand, finally stops resetting.
He spent my future like it was his to take.
Now he calls me every month hoping I'll fix his.